Yeah, come on, you.
Hello, what's all this then?
Oh, hello there, officer. I was just trying to get this beached whale back into the ocean.
I'll have you know that any mammal that happens to wash up on the shores of England must first be offered up to the reigning monarch before being released back into the ocean.
But that doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't have to make sense, sir. It's just the law. Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Helpful Policeman. Now that you mention it, I do recall seeing countless whales dragged through the streets of London off to meet the Queen. Of course I haven't. While none are quite as ridiculous as that, here are 7 things that should no longer exist in our favourite video games.
Escort missions, or as I've dubbed them, Escort the Imbecile missions, have been plaguing video games for decades. All the way back from when our characters were just a small assortment of pixels, we can see escort missions crop up in some of our favourite games, such as Spyro, Jak and Daxter, and yes, even Metal Gear Solid. It seems no game is completely free of these horrible, horrible missions where you have to escort some sort of absolute imbecile through hordes of enemies that most of the time they could have actually easily avoided. They didn't actually need to go that way or get into whatever mess they've gotten into, but you know, you're the hero, you're the protagonist, it's time for you to escort dummy McIdiot over here through all these enemies, regardless of how irritating or time consuming it is for you, who is supposed to be saving the world in some fashion by now.
Right, here's the plan. I've cleared that room, but I need to go back in and get some supplies. So don't go in there until I come back, okay? Stay here and wait for me, okay? What did I tell you?
Oh. We have seen a decline in these recently in video games, however, in the Spyro Reignited trilogy, it definitely reignited my passionate hatred for these kind of missions, and is the perfect example of why they are so unnecessary and silly. It's right there. Your final destination is right round this corner. You pretty much actually could avoid all the enemies by yourself. I don't even need to intervene. I really don't even need to be here. You could go from A to B seriously easily without me. But no, you're gonna go all the way around this convoluted, silly maze with all these giant enemies holding pickaxes for no reason other than you must be an absolute imbecile. To top it all off in Spyro, it's made even worse by the fact that this man is a scientist. You know, generally considered intelligent people. Well, definitely not this one. Jak and Daxter was just as bad, with us having to escort some wisecracking moron through a sewer full of not the hardest of enemies in the world, but still hard enough to be quite annoying. But put it this way, we're escorting mercenaries, demolition men, hired thugs, these people who are supposed to be, you know, able to shoot things, and then it turns out when you get to the end, all you need to do is let him blow up a statue. You know, because we couldn't have brought the explosive with us ourselves, given that we walked all the way here and did all of this, and forget it. There is, at least in my mind, absolutely no excuse for this next one, and while vague dialogue only matters in certain games perhaps, this is most devastating in games with story branches and ones that put emphasis on story and dialogue and emotions and, you know, generally getting more immersive into the experience of a game. So when I try to tell someone off for overreacting and instead throw the news of a fake divorce in my brother's face, it kind of ruins the game for me to the point where I'm having to quit and reload my last save.
Always judging everyone, except himself.
You know what, David? Time for you to open your eyes. Kate's gonna leave your ass.
What?
She told me so.
Honey!
You said that?
Jesus Christ, no! We were talking about traveling and I just... No, I definitely didn't say that. At all.
Because like hell is that going to be the way I want my story to play out forward. And don't even get me started on this absolutely nuclear bomb of a vague dialogue option from The Witcher 3. Give him something or simply push him out of my badass Witcher way.
Sorry, can't let that happen.
No, my leg! Ah!
I'm someone who likes stories in a game. I love every single Telltale game. The stories are incredible and immersive to the most part. It's absolutely wonderful. I like books, but games do it much better. You can completely get immersed and feel like you're taking part in the story instead of just reading and imagining, and maybe then you read something in another chapter and it doesn't quite match up with what your imagination put together yourself, and that's fine. But gaming takes it to a whole new level with immersion. So you can imagine the frustration that I face with vague dialogue options. There is simply no reason it needs to be vague. Just write even the beginning of what the character is actually going to say. Just write the beginning and we'll probably get the entire tone of that dialogue option anyway. You know, you summarising it's fine if you want to do that, but summarise it properly. This is definitely something that does not need to exist in games anymore. I will personally volunteer for any game company that wants to send me their game so I can play it and make sure there is no vague dialogue options. I'll happily do it. Send it to me, you know, or ask. I'm here.
You smell wonderful.
Geralt, we're at a funeral.
You smell wonderful at this funeral.
Number 3, lack of accessibility. Now this might be a controversial subject in some cases, but hear me out. Games like Resident Evil 2 Remake and Soma come with an absolute buttload of accessibility. Soma is a horror game with a safe mode, and Resident Evil is a survival horror with difficulties that allow you to safely kill everything and still have lots of supplies, able to progress, saving whenever you like. So, does this ruin those games? No, because you can still play them as they were intended. They were still crafted around the idea of their respective games. They kept their identities while adding accessibility options around it. As long as the game can still be played as intended and it doesn't ruin the base experience, such games as Bloodborne, Demon's Souls and Dark Souls would probably benefit from adding accessibility options. Making it possible to experience the game in an easier way doesn't take away from the core experience. If anything, it invites players who might be put off by the difficulties, lets them experience something in a fun way, and might actually make them curious enough to, play it as intended. Playing it in a safe way is just a way for people to get more familiar with the game. That's not to mention things like disabilities. Of course, accessibility options that help people with disabilities are nothing but good. But we're talking about accessibility options that just allow games to be accessed in a different way. The Last of Us 2 was a pretty good example of this recently. It has an absolute ton of accessibility options, and The Last of Us 2 might not even strike you as a game that needs these type of things, yet there they are, and why not? Heck, imagine an accessibility mode of Demon's Souls or Dark Souls that allows you to just simply walk around experiencing the music and the beautiful environments, and maybe some crazy character pops up every now and then with interesting info about the game, telling you about this and that and all the other dynamical things that went into making the game. Demon's Souls and Dark Souls could be walked around as such. It could be like a small little museum of gaming architecture.
Okay, class, if you all pay attention, you'll see to our right an exact replica of the very toilet that Hidetaka Miyazaki grew up using.
Woo! Accessibility hasn't always been around. It's been added little bit by little bit, and I never feel there's been a massive discussion about it, but having a ton of accessibility options in just about any game can be nothing but beneficial, really, as long as they don't take away from the identity of the game and are added around it. Then I think it could be a great thing in absolutely any game. In at number 4, we've got the ability to respec your skill points. Now, games like Bloodborne and Dark Souls, and even other RPGs that don't want you constantly dead, don't let you respec your hard-earned skill points. Now, I get the appeal of the struggle building a character, meticulously and carefully placing each skill point and growing in the game and seeing the results at the end of it. I do, and I do enjoy it. But if I could respec, does that prevent me from having that experience? No. Does it prevent me from creating another character and doing it the traditional way instead of respecing my current one? No. It's just a handy option for those wanting to experience new weapons, abilities and builds without having to start all over again. It takes absolutely nothing away from the game itself. RPGs take tens if not hundreds of hours to reach a maximum build. Most of us, adults, yes, I'm an adult, do not have time to play these games multiple times just to experience what it would be like to play with different skills or different weapons. It's only maybe to discover I don't actually enjoy playing it and I've wasted my entire time. For example, I adore Bloodborne, but I never had time to go back and make that full beast build that I so desperately wanted, and I most likely never will. At number 5, we've got No Chapter Select. This is one that might be quite niche, but for me, there are numerous chapters or set pieces in games I would love to experience again, only to realise I'd have to play through the better half of a 30-hour game in order to do so. Games like God of War and Spider-Man have some incredible set pieces and boss fights, and while the idea of playing these games all over again isn't exactly unappealing, I just simply don't have the time to play the whole thing again just to play that one bit. I'd love to fight that dragon again in God of War and bury my axe into its skull as Kratos jumps off and sees it falls around him heroically. I would love to play the Spider-Man prison mission over and over again, with that amazing cinematic at the end of it, where he's fighting all of his foes at once. Oh, it's such an awesome moment! And if I want to play it again, I've got to play all of Spider-Man again. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot to some people, but I just wish you could play the best of a game whenever you felt like it. Chapter Select seemed to be more of a normal thing during the PlayStation 2 era than it is today, sadly. I have no idea why it sort of dropped off a bit, but it's a shame it has. In a top and ultimate entry, we have unskippable cutscenes. In this age of remasters and remakes, replaying games has become something people like to do regularly with glee and joy, reminiscing and visiting old friends in a nostalgic sense. So, for the love of God, Final Fantasy, please let me skip a cutscene.
For example, before you even get to play Final Fantasy X Remastered, you'll have to sit through this. And when you finally get past the main menu, you get to sit through this.
If those two sped up clips look very similar to you, that's because they were. If cutscenes are very important to the story, have a pop-up telling people, and then maybe let me skip them. No? At least on New Game Pluses, there should always be skippable cutscenes that's no debate. Skippable cutscenes should be able to happen on a second playthrough. That is just absolute law in my mind. But come on, there needs to be more ways for us to skip cutscenes, especially in this day and age. Some of these cutscenes last absolutely ages and they are right before a boss. That should be a gaming sin in my book. Don't put large, unskippable cutscenes before bosses, especially difficult bosses. Just the Iceborne expansion for Monster Hunter World has over 3 hours of cutscenes alone. It's just an expansion, just 3 hours! Never have I sat through so many unskippable cutscenes in a game than Monster Hunter World. That means so little to the story. It's mind-boggling why they made that choice. Show me the monster's face so I can smash my charge blade into it. That is all I need. Thank you very much. And Final Fantasy, you should have cut this laugh out altogether, let alone make me watch it again.
Now let's see what you can do.
Huh?
Come on.
Alright, cut, stop, that's enough. That is literally all I can take of that. And our top entry in at number 1 is walking speed. Specifically, the walking speed of NPCs not matching yours in various scenarios. There is almost nothing worse in my opinion. This is teeth-grindingly irritating. You want to either just enjoy a walk and listen to the interesting dialogue, or just get on with it. One or the other, and you can't do either of them pretty much any of the time. Walking is too slow. The NPC starts acting weird, waiting, or telling you to hurry up, which is so infuriating because you have the power to move faster, but it's just too fast. There is absolutely no reason for this whatsoever. Just let me hold the X button to match the NPC's walking speed, and that solves pretty much 90% of the problem straight off the bat, and just follow their designated path if I hold X. Anything. Speed me up a little if I pull too far behind a certain distance, and make me slow down if I get too close to the NPC. There are so many easy ways to do this that I don't understand how it still exists in gaming today. The NPCs should not walk at a pace that you cannot match for any reason. I mean, look at this for Pete's sakes. Even the NPC dogs are having trouble. And that concludes our list of the top 7 things that should no longer exist in our favourite video games. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget, guys, you can get 20% off your Insert Coin orders with discount code ICDVG20. That's 20% off all orders at Insert Coin Clothing, except bundles and charity offers. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys, and I will see you next time.
Every time we see one, we gather around with our scones and tea and try and have a whale party. It's all la-di-da in England. Must get button undone before I die. Whenever we see one, we try and cut a bit off and take it home. Oh, look, I've got the Queen's food, I've got the Queen's food, we shout.